Morning, everybody. My name is David, and I'm an alcoholic. Nice turnout we've got this morning. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker, John A. He's from the DFW area. First met John at Man to Man conference in Brownwood, and it became very apparent to me that he's gifted. He has the gift to be able to communicate a message. And I was thinking about, I think frequently about our primary purpose. I was just taking a peek at page 18 that says, I'm going to paraphrase where page 18 says roughly that psychiatrists and doctors and ministers and members of the clergy find it difficult to deal with people like us because they can never get through. But it goes on to say, you take an ex-problem drinker who's armed with the facts and understands the solution, can generally win the confidence of another alcoholic in just a few short hours. And until such an understanding is reached, very little could be accomplished. So I've known John for a while now, and he has that gift to be able to communicate and reach another alcoholic in ways that sometimes other people can't. And so I'm looking forward to hear what John has to say. I think he's going to teach us a little bit of, not teach, we show each other in AA. We do not teach. So I'm anxious and looking forward to hear what he's going to say and tell us and show about step. Well, I'm going to let him do it. He does a much better job than I do. So let's give a warm welcome to John.
That's Dave's way of saying we don't know what the hell's going on here. My name is John Allred, and I'm an alcoholic. And I am glad to be here, down here at the Aggie Land Conference. I was here, I guess, about 10 years ago. I think this is the third time I was here, about 10 years prior. So about every 10 years, I show up. Well, this one, like, oh, okay, James. Better? Okay. All right. So I'm glad to be here this year. And I don't know, when we were talking about what this workshop was going to be on, they kind of said, well, you pick it. It doesn't matter to us. And one of the things I think about Alcoholics Anonymous, that's an alcoholic. I do one of two things. I either go hog bore on whatever project I'm doing and I just go after it, or I just don't do anything. And that's kind of the way I work the steps. I'm either totally into it or I'm not doing any of it. One or the other. That's how it used to be. And I think that I did 2 weeks ago. I was in Ohio at a conference, and I did a workshop, and I did on 4 and 5. So I think I'll do 6 and 7 this time. Next week I'm in Seattle. I'm going to do 8 and 9. They asked me to do 8 and 9. So you guys are doing right in the middle of 6 and 7. I think the problem with Alcoholics Anonymous, the workshop we're going to talk about is, do you really want your character defects removed? Is that what you really want to have happen? You want to get those character defects gone? It sounds good to get rid of all your character defects, and we all mouth that, but do you really want that to happen? And how are you going to go about doing that? How those character defects are going to be removed? A couple things I find amazing, because we're talking about sex today. I'm just the right guy to talk about that. I'll tell you the truth. I used to have a sex problem. And then after getting into Alcoholics Anonymous and getting God in my life and experiencing a rebirth in spirituality, I really come to see that sex is it's a very spiritual, sacred, holy experience. Something that should be enjoyed and shared by the 3 people involved. Kind of let you know where I am on that deal. I think one of the big myths in Alcoholics Anonymous, there are a lot of myths. You hear a lot of myths. One of the myths that you'll hear is, well, I would rather have quality sobriety than quantity. You ever notice people say that, make that statement, never have any quantity? They've always got about 2 years when they come up with that gem that they have quality than quantity. And I think the longer you're around, I'll tell you, I have a lot more respect for long-term sobriety today than I ever did when I came in, because you really learn that these guys with a lot of sobriety have lived life on life's terms and didn't drink. And how did they do that? Because I was in a meeting at Dallas North, my home group, and they were talking about slips and what caused the slip. What are the warning signs, the triggers that cause it? So this was the new terminology that has crept into AA, is the triggers that are going to trigger a trip and cause a slip. And I got to meet him. I turned to share, and I said, I don't really know what causes a slip. I really don't know what causes it. I do. I know what doesn't cause you to slip. I know that going broke doesn't cause you to slip. I know that losing your job doesn't cause you to slip. That getting married or having a relationship doesn't cause you to slip. Getting divorced doesn't cause you to slip. Losing your house doesn't cause you to slip. Having your car repoed doesn't cause you to slip. Going bankrupt doesn't cause you to slip. I know all that stuff doesn't cause you to slip. I know that because I've either done it or I've sponsored guys that have gone through that and they didn't slip. So I know that stuff doesn't cause you to slip. So I guess in reality, I do know what caused you to slip. If you drink, you will slip. It's that simple. Everything else doesn't cause you to slip. It's because you drank. That's why you slip, And now there are some things that we can do to avoid the pain that's going to let that creep into you. And some of that is having those character defects removed. We can't continue to do the same stuff we did drinking and do it sober. It just doesn't work. And we're talking about that a little bit today. I tell you, when I was at new sober, I was about 3 years sober. I had a very dear friend, Kevin. And Kevin died at 11 years sober. And he died, Kevin had become a real health fanatic, and he was pumping weight twice a day. He was working out and he really was watching his diet and all that stuff. And he was trying to better himself and improve himself, very aggressive in his recovery program. And we were having lunch one day, and it was real boring to have lunch with him because he'd have like a salad, no dressing on it. Baked potato, nothing on it. Just eat that stuff bare. But he was, in the middle of lunch, he said, I got to hurry and go. I got to finish. This was Friday. I got to finish my inventory. I said, you're doing another inventory? He said, yeah. I said, he did 4 steps that year. I said, what are you doing inventory on? And he said, well, I said, I'm peeling the onion, getting down to a little more causes and conditions. I'm just saying, peel off the onion. I'm having problems with relationships. And he was. And I said, well, Kevin, do you want me to tell you why you're having problems with relationships? He said, why? And I said, because you're a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch. That's why you're having problems with it. See, selfish, self-centeredness, that is the root of our problem. And he's going to peel the onion a little more, finally having problems with relationships. I'm in a meeting at Dallas North, my home group at that time, and it was on finances. The girl chairing the meeting, she wanted to do an inventory on finances because she's having trouble with finances. And I got to me, I said, well, I'll tell you why you're having a problem with finances. I said, we didn't have a problem with finances. It's because you're a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch. That's why, So we like to spend more money than we make. Just selfishness. That's the root of our problem. I'll save you that inventory. See, what happens is we think we're going to inventory those problems away. We think we're going to take and find out what's wrong with us by writing more inventories away. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, I had a terrible time with sex. And how am I going to change? How's that going to be different? Big character defects. That encompasses everything. And by the way, until I get that under control, I don't have a shot at having a successful relationship. Just not going to have a shot at it. If I'm always that's always going to interfere with whatever relationship I have. So I got to get that under control if I'm going to have a successful relationship. So how am I going to do that? And we learned how not to do something in step 1. We learned how not to do it. What do we do? Well, I got a problem with drinking. How did I get over that problem? Well, it was very specific. I had to not drink. So I had to quit drinking one day at a time. I had to go to meetings. I had to talk to my sponsor about it. And I had to pray to have God remove that from me. I had to go to meetings. I had to talk to my sponsor about it. And I had to pray to have God remove that from me. And then I didn't drink. I had the compulsion to drink, but I did it. I attended meetings, talked to my sponsor. I prayed to have God remove that desire to drink, and he removed it. To drink. So how am I going to get rid of that? And as I said, I had a terrible tell you, I was reading an inventory right about that time. I was getting into 6 and 7, and they were talking about the average. They're talking about the sex life of the normal, healthy American. Now I'm explaining what normal means. Okay. Normal is what the average person does in any given society. That's the norm of that society. So it can change from one society to another, what the normal is. But in America, the normal, healthy American male has like 9 sex partners in his lifetime. And the normal, healthy female has like 5 sex partners in her lifetime. That's what the article said. I read that and I thought, man, they got to be talked about every 6 months. That can't be lifetime achievement award. That just can't be that. So how am I going to change that? Well, that's my attitude. How am I going to be different than that? Because I'm driven by that. Never was friends with a woman. Never. How am I going to change that? Well, as I said, we're going to have to. Here's what happens when you get involved in that stuff. They say, well, I'm going to write about it. I'm going to go home and write about relationships. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to do an inventory on relationships, find out why I can't have a successful relationship. Let me ask you a question. Sorry, Dan. Would you ever get sober if you wrote about drinking and continued to drink? Would you get sober? No. Yeah, we think we're going to have a successful relationship by writing about the relationship and it continue to happen. It's not going to happen. So what I had to do, I had to quit having relationships. Rather write about it, wouldn't you? Nothing good come from it, but at least you can say I'm working on it, So I think it'd be good to take inventory on it. We're not going to be able to inventory those problems away. That's not what the change does not take place in 4 and 5. Nothing changes in the 4th step. What change happens is in 5 and 6. 6 and 7. That's where the change takes place. But those are only little teeny sentences in the big book, There's one line, So how are we going to, I can't make the change happen. So I'm going to have to quit having relationships one day at a time, talk to my sponsor about it, and then pray to have God change me. And I was driven by that stuff. I didn't know how not to do it. And so I had to quit dating. I guess if I could have dated and not ask her in, or asked to come in at the end of the day, I could have done it, but I couldn't do that. So I had to quit dating. People say, how long I quit dating? I said, I don't know. I quit dating for a while. And so what happened when I did that is I quit dating. I prayed to have God change me, and I started to be friends with John. See, until I'm friends with me, I haven't got a shot at being friend with you. So I started to, for the first time in my life, I attended a movie by myself. Never forget, I attended The Abyss. Shows you how long ago that was. And I watched that movie, and I learned to be friends with John. I learned to be okay alone, in my own skin. And then I extended that out after a while. I started to be friends with guys. And I have a relationship with guys. And it was okay to have a relationship with guys because I wasn't driven by that sex issue. The sex issue never played a role in my life with a guy, and so I learned to be friends with guys. And until I'm friends with me and until I'm friends with a guy, I don't have a shot at being friends with a woman. But I don't know how to be a friend. I don't know how to do that. Never been a friend. Always been a user. Always been a manipulator. Always been trying to control the outcome of everything. So I had to learn to be friends with me. And then today I have some men friends that I would die for. I literally would. I'm not close to those guys. And so then I was still not dating, and I was kicking around Dallas. And a friend of mine, a guy, not in AA, but we were friends, invited me to his company Christmas party. And so I said, great. And so I go to this company Christmas party, and we're out there. Even back then, this is back in the 80s, they were really prejudiced against smokers. They just started to build that momentum against smokers, and I was a smoking fanatic. I smoked 4 packs a day back then. But they had to go out on the balcony to smoke in this party. And so I'm out there on the balcony smoking, meet this gal. She's smoking, so we bonded. We got a lot in common. We bonded, and we're out there smoking and joking and talking. Her name was Nancy, and I got to know her name. And And went home and I called my sponsor next day and I said, "But went to the party." Said, the party was great, Met a gal. He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, I met a gal. I'm thinking about taking her out." He said, "Well," he said, "Okay, you can do that on one condition." I said, "What's that?" "Be totally honest with her. You gotta be totally honest. If you can be totally honest with her, you can go out. If you can't be totally honest, you can't go." I said, "Well, I can be honest." He said, "I don't think so, but we'll find out." You know? So I said, "Well, how do I go about asking her out?" He said, "Well, you got her number?" I said, "I got her number." So you call her on the phone and ask her out. Every guy knows that's death. That's just, I would rather eat poison than ask a girl out on a date. Oh, hard. See, what I like to do is I like to go to the meeting. Okay, it's Wednesday. I'm at Dallas North Temp, and we're real territorial. We always sit in the same place. So I'm sitting back there in my chair, and I notice her Wednesday night. She's sitting over here. Okay. So the next Wednesday, I will move over a little bit. And every week I start to make my way over to where she's sitting. And about a month into that, about fourth week, I'm sitting close to her. And I get to talk to her, find out what she's doing, her name, and and kind of where they go to coffee. So the next week I go to coffee at the coffee shop, and a big table, all of us sitting there, 10 out, bikes out having coffee after the meeting. I'm down at this end, she's at this end. So every week I start to make my way down toward her end a little bit. Finally, about a month later, I'm down close to her, and it takes me 2 months to get a date, but no thread. Just I ask her out. She says, "What? That's what I do." He says, "No, no game plan. We're just gonna call her up and ask her out." So I call her on the phone and ask her out. She said, "Yes, I'm excited. We're gonna go on the date." So we go out and we did everything the first night. We went to dinner, we went to a movie, and we went dancing all the first date. Had nothing to do the second date, but we went all dropped her off at 2:00 in the morning. It was great. Didn't have to ask to come in for coffee. You ever notice the only people that drink coffee at 2 a.m. are alcoholics? Everybody else says, "I'm going to bed, man." But no, you want coffee? Want to come in for a little coffee? We're insane with that stuff. So I didn't have to ask for coffee. Just said goodnight and went home and called my sponsor. 2:30 in the morning, called my sponsor. He answers the phone. I said, "Well, I'm home." He says, "Are you alone?" I said, "Yeah." "The only time I want you to call me at 2 a.m. in the morning is when you're not alone." Okay. Okay. So I started to date Nancy, and we just dated. That's all we did. We just dated. I learned a lot. I learned how to be a friend. I learned how not to talk. I learned how not to have that third date conversation. That third date conversation? We like to have that usually about the third date, because usually day three we've known them. And that third, I don't know how about yours. Mine kind of went like this. Honey, when we met, I really wasn't looking for a relationship. I was perfectly fine the way I was, and I don't know. I guess it's a God deal. That's all there's to it. And you start to define the relationship. What are we doing here? What are we doing on this? What are we doing here? And you start to define it. As soon as you have that third date conversation, boom, it's over. I don't know how you fix that. It's over. No matter what you decide in that conversation, you've blown it. I have guys I sponsor for them and say, "You know what? I've been dating Nancy. Yeah, I know. I saw you with her Friday. Yeah. Now it's Monday. We've been out 3 times. Yeah. And we've decided we're just going to be sex buddies." Really? They use a different word than sex, but you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, we're just going to, no emotion, no commitment. Whenever one of us gets a little anxious, we're just going to be that release valve. So it'll be great. I said, "Wow. I never heard that before." Whose idea was that? So, and here you decide to do that, you blew it. What happens if God wants you to be more than that? You can't. You decided to just be sex buddies. You made the decision. I've had other guys come in and say, "Well, we've decided just to be friends." You blew it. What if God wants you to be more than that? Why don't you let God put that deal together and keep your mouth shut? Not have that conversation, keep your mouth shut, and let God make of it whatever he's going to make of it. It's none of your business what the relationship is. It's your business to be honest in that relationship. That's the whole thing. It's your business to be honest in that. You got to keep your mouth shut. And I learned I just started dating Nancy and you want to talk about how neat she is and how much you love her and all that stuff, tell your sponsor. Don't tell her. You know, it's none of her business. And it's none of your business what she's doing when you're not around. It's her business what she's doing when you're not around. It's not your business. You need to do those drive-by checks, make sure everybody's home Friday night at 8 o'clock, you know? And so we just dated. We didn't have that. We just dated and decided that it was going to be what it was going to be. We never even had that conversation about let's not talk. We just didn't talk. She was a normie, so we just dated, and it was an incredible deal. I learned, how to be honest in that relationship, and that came out of sheer desperation. See, my sponsor had told me if you want to take a girl out, you got to ask her 5 or 6 days ahead of time. If you can't ask, you want to go out Saturday, you got to ask her by Tuesday. If you can't ask her by Tuesday, you can't go. You're not going to call her up Friday night and ask her out for Friday night or Saturday. You ever notice that when they do that? Let me tell you why they do that. They've been shopping. The guy's been shopping all week, and you won by default. You couldn't find another date, so you get to be the date. Isn't that nice? So you got to ask her out 5 days ahead of time. And by the way, guys, the same thing's true with you. You ask her out. I used to call girls up and ask her on Tuesday, ask them out for Friday, Saturday. And they'd say, John, I live one day at a time. I never plan that far ahead. Call me Saturday morning. And I'll tell you, don't call. You call Saturday morning, let me tell you what happens. I used to sit there waiting until 8 o'clock. You don't want to call too early Saturday. So I'd wait till I'd watch the clock. 8 o'clock comes. I'm calling her 8 o'clock. So I'm watching the clock till 8 o'clock. Boom, she's on speed down. Answers the phone. So you ask her out. She said, oh, John, I have plans. No, you can't have plans. You don't make plans. You said call Saturday. She said, well, he called just before you did. I'm sorry. So I have plans, She's been shopping all week. The reason she didn't say yes because she's been shopping. She's busy shopping. I love how we are so, we're going to fall madly in love with this person forever, yet we can't make plans 5 days ahead of time. It's crazy. And so I'd ask her out on it was Tuesday. I asked her out about Saturday. She said yes. So we're on Saturday, and I got paid at that time. I was working with an insurance company. We got paid on the 1st and 15th, and the 15th fell on a Sunday. Well, I asked her out, and usually they pay us on Friday. Checks come in Friday. If paydays over the weekend, they pay you on Friday, and you get the cash check, and you're okay. Well, the checks didn't come in. They come out of New York. They didn't come in. So Friday, I go to get my checks. She said, no, the checks aren't here. I only got $7. I got $7. I said, no, I got to have my check. Got to have my check. Get in advance or something. I got a date. I got to have my check. I only got $7. Got to have my check. She says, no, if you look at your employee manual, it says that if payday is on the weekend, then we'll pay you the following Monday. And they didn't come in. They usually come in. When they come in, we pay you ahead of time. Because we just assured that's out of the kindness of our heart, but we don't really need to pay it till Monday. So you get paid Monday when the checks come in. I said, no, can't do it. So now I'm so upset I got to leave work, go home. And the first thing that happens every time I'm in distress like that, I do the worst thing possible. And that is I seek isolation. So I leave the office. I go home, stop, buy a 6-pack of Diet Coke, carton of cigarettes, go home, pull the curtains, lock the door, smoke and drink Coke, and think about it. I got a date. How am I going to get out of this date? Oh my God, I only have $7 in my pocket. About 6 o'clock, I have an intuitive thought. I know what I can do. Back then, Tom Thumb would cash a check for $100. So there's a Tom Thumb right next door to her apartment building. I'm going to go write me a check for $100 Saturday. On the way to pick her up, I'll stop, write a check for $100, get $100, take her on this date. But a marvelous time. I'm in Fat City now. I'm feeling so good I can go to a meeting. So I leave there. I go up to my home group, 8 o'clock meeting at Dallas North. My sponsor's there. He shouldn't be there. It's not his home group. He's got no business being in my group. So I'm sitting in my chair, avoiding him at all costs, not looking at him. After the meeting, he comes up and says, What are you doing? I said, nothing. He said, well, what are you thinking about doing? I said, well, I got a date tomorrow night with Nancy. It's okay. And I said, well, I got $7 in my pocket. He said, well, it's going to be a short date. And I got it figured out. He said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to go to Tom Thumb. On the way to pick her up, I'm going to stop at Tom Thumb right next door to her apartment building. I'm going to write a check. He said, wait a minute, but you can't go. He said, what do you mean I can't go? I can go. She said she'd go. He said, no, you can't. Remember our deal? Remember our arrangement? You can date her as long as you're totally honest. I said, yeah, because you're not being honest. He said, what do you mean I'm not being honest? I haven't lied to her. No, you're lying. You are going to Tom Thumb. You're right. When you write that check, Tom Thumb, you are promising Tom Thumb you have that money in the bank. You don't have that money in the bank. But it'll be there. It'll be there before the check. I said, nope, you don't have the money in the bank. You don't know that for sure. You're lying to Tom Thumb. You're going there. You are embezzling $100 from Tom Thumb. You are stealing money from Tom Thumb. You're going out and you're spending stolen funds on that girl. You're not only a liar, you're a thief. And she deserves better than that. I said, jeez. So what do I do? And he says, you call him and tell her you can't go. Would rather eat nails. So what happens when she says why? Then you tell her you just can't afford to go. Tell her the truth. Oh, God. So it's Friday night. I think, okay, Friday night, Dallas, Texas, young girl, single. She's out. She's not going to be home I can leave a message on her machine. So I call her. She answered the phone. So what are you doing home Friday night? She says, what, nothing. I said, listen, back tomorrow night, I can't go. And she said, oh, okay. See, she's not an alcoholic. She didn't need to know why. So I asked her, I said, don't you want to know why? She said, well, if you want to tell me. I said, well, I was going to get, I thought I'd get paid today. Didn't get paid. Supposed to pay me today. They didn't pay me today. The checks didn't come in. They didn't get paid today. I only got $7 in my pocket. You satisfied? She said, what? She said, are you telling me you can't go because you don't have any money? I said, yes, I don't have any money. I'm flat broke. Happy? She said, that's your problem. We've been dating about 3 months. She said, I'll tell you what, I've been meaning to cook for you. I mean, why don't you tell you what, take your $7, go rent this is when Blockbuster was going, go rent a movie at We'll do a Blockbuster date. I'll cook for you. We'll have dinner over here. And we'll watch a movie over here. See, that's not the way I do it. That's not my MO. I'm the knight on the white horse. I'm going to ride into her life and scoop her up and put her on the back of my horse. Problems? We don't got problems. Money problems? How much money do you need, baby? We can get money. Money's not a problem for us. We get all the money we need here, baby. See, what you find out in AA, there are only 3 kinds of people you're going to date. There's going to be the Florence Nightingales. They're the ones that want to take care of you. A lot of those are in Al-Anon, but we got a lot of them in AA too, okay? Florence Nightingale's going to take care of you. Then you have the damsels in distress. Most of those are in AA. You know, they want to be taken care of. You know, just take care of me. And then you got the healthy ones. But you need to worry about the healthy ones. You'll never find them. Your picker broke a long time ago, and it ain't going to get fixed. So your picker's broke, you never find them. Trying to find a date in AA, a good date in AA is like trying to find a parking spot at Christmas time, you know? You never find them. Never. And if you do find one, it'll be marked handicapped, you know? Certainly should be marked handicapped. So, I'm going to write, I still like to paint this picture of the gal that I think you got a problem with that ex-boyfriend, that ex-husband? Oh, baby, let me tell you, we can take care of him. I know people, okay? You give me the nod, he'll never bother you again, baby. I'll take care of you. You never have to worry about it, you know? What we find out is this picture I've painted of what I think she wants to see usually takes about 6 weeks before the reality of the situation of who I am replaces the picture that I've painted. Because the picture I painted was totally a lie. And that's when my relationship lasted 6 weeks. And I said, wait a minute, this doesn't match the picture of what he's saying. So you break up. You know, you can't have a successful relationship built on lies. I got a guy sponsoring, and he was a better liar than me, and that's hard to be a better liar than me. I'm a very good liar. And he bought his wife or his fiance a beautiful diamond. I said, "That's you bought it." He showed it to me, and I said, "What? How much you pay for that?" He said, "Well, it's not real. It's zirconia." And I said, "Well, tell her." And he said, "Why would I do that?" So he gave it to her, and I said, "You didn't tell her?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, you're done." I said, "The women, by the way, they like to look at those rings. Then their girlfriends like to look at them, and they'll say, let's take it down and get it appraised, and you're dead. You know, you bought her a fake ring." But we like to do that. We do that kind of stuff, all those lies, those character defects, those lies. But I learned by telling the truth with Nancy out of sheer desperation that I'm not my pocketbook. I'm not the car I drive. I'm not where I live. What I am is a child of God. And let's find out whether you like me or not without putting a lot of energy and time and invest a lot of our emotions into this relationship before you find out who I am. So my obligation in that relationship is to be as honest as I can, and let's find out whether you like me or not before we go all emotional on this thing. And I found out in that relationship that you can have an incredible life as long as you really. What happens in this is it's like when you boil frogs. You ever anybody boil any frogs? If you want to boil frogs, eat frog legs. You take and you can't put it in a pot of boiling water. The pot of boiling water, the frog's reflex is so fast it jumps out before it gets cooked. So what you have to do is you have to put the frog in a big bowl of cool water. Frog's in there, he likes it. It's cool. He's swimming around. Then you turn the heat up. Pretty soon the frog said, it's getting a little hot in here, but it's not that bad. Turn up a little more. Frog swim around. Well, getting real hot now, but you know what? It's not that bad. Pretty soon the water's going, frog's cooked, you can't get out. That's how you boil a frog. I have to believe what they're telling me. When I'm dating people, I have to believe what they're telling me on that date. I have to say, well, that's the classic syndrome of the battered woman. If he beat you on the first date, you'd leave. You wouldn't go on the second date. But he was really cool. Really cool guy. You swam around. It was a lot of fun. And then he lied to you. Well, but it ain't that bad. Next time he pushed you. Yeah, it's terrible, but it's not that bad. Pretty soon you can't get out. It's just boiling water. That's all that happens. And the same with guys. I took a gal out. I have to believe her to see. It's the old scorpion and the turtle. They get to the bank of the water, and turtle's going to swim across the river. Scorpion says, "Hey, I want to go across. Can I get on your back?" Turtle says, "No." She says, "Why not?" "Well, you're a scorpion. You'll sting me." Now, why would I do that? Or in the middle of the water, I'd drown too. Why would I sting you? Well, it makes sense to the turtle. So he says, "Get on." So they're swimming across the river. Scorpion's on the back of the turtle. Halfway through, the scorpion stings him around top of the head. Turtle says, "My God, why did you do that? Now we both die. Why would you do that?" And the scorpion says, "Hey, you knew what I was when you picked me up." And yet we know going in things sometimes that person's no good. But we're going to change it. We're going to change it. I dated a girl, and I'm out on this date. And the very first date, I dropped her off at home, and I was leaving her. And we get to the front door, and she says, "John, I got something I got to tell you. I got a confession to make." And I said, "What's your about what?" She says, "Well, I stood a guy up to go out with you tonight. Because I really wanted to go out. He asked me. I had a date, but I stood him up to go out with you." You know my mindset? My mindset, hell, I don't blame you. Little ego involved in that, And then I can't even be mad at her a year and a half later when she stands me up. She told me what she does, right? She told me what she does. I didn't believe her because she wouldn't do it to me. Because I believe different. I believe she won't do that to me. I can't be mad at her for standing me up. Because that's what she does. And I love to play with scorpions. Bright, shiny scorpions, A lot of glitter and glamour in those scorpions. And when I get stung, I can't even be mad at them. Because I know what they are. I'm playing with scorpions. Big character defect of mine. So I have to believe what they tell me. In business, I have to believe that. The guy tells me what he did on a business deal, he's going to do it to me. You know? Now I have to decide, do I want that business, knowing that he's going to screw me down the road? Because he's going to. Do I have to get involved with her and take her on a second date when I know after a year and a half and I'm all emotionally tied up, she's going to do the same thing to me? You know? All those character... See, I don't even know what a character defect is anymore. I really don't. What I think happens in Alcoholics Anonymous is when we come into A, we're on a pretty broad path. I can do anything on that path as long as I don't drink. I'm running all over that path, and I'm okay. And then the path gets a little narrower on you. A couple of years go by, the path gets a little narrower on you. Now you're doing the same stuff you're doing last year. But it's like you're off in the weeds, and you're stumbling over rocks and bulrushes, and it's rough over that. So you got to give a couple things up, put you back on the path. Now I'm okay. I can do a couple things. I mean, I can, as long as I don't drink and don't do these two other things, I'm okay. I can do anything else but those two other things. And a couple years go by, the path's a little narrow on you. Now I'm back on the weeds. I'm stumbling over rocks. Hey, you have a couple more things up, I'm back on the path. Now there are 4 or 5 things I can't do. Now the reality is this: it's really like an hourglass. Because the more I give up, the more freedom I have. Never was I more captive and in slavery than when I was drinking. Total slave to my emotions when I was drinking. I gave up alcohol. Did I lose anything? No, got more freedom. Give up all those character defects of truth. And it's all going to be based on truth and lies. You know, as soon as I give up those more character defects, the more freedom I have. I don't lose anything in that. I gain freedom. But it's going to be, I wish I could tell you that you can say the 7th step prayer and it's all gone. And I hear people saying all the time that how they come back. I don't know if they're ever really gone or not. I don't know whether it is the right thing to have them gone or not. All at once. I don't know how I'd react to that happen. But I think what happens is the road gets narrower on you. And, I don't even know what I'm doing. I know there are things I did last year I can't do this year and be comfortable with in my own skin. I know there are things I'm doing right now that I won't be able to do next year. And I don't know what those things are till they bother me. You can tell me, hey, man, you need to knock that shit off. That's crazy. You need to quit doing that. You can tell me that all you want. Anybody tell you got to quit drinking? Anybody tell you drink is going to kill you? Your drink is out of control? You're an alcoholic and you knock it off? Did they ever tell you that? Did they ever quit? No. So you can tell me you got to knock that off. Got to quit doing that. Until it bothers me, until the pain gets... I wish it was different. I wish I could tell you that I would listen. Now, sometimes I do listen. Today, 35 years later, I do listen a little more than I used to. My sponsor tells me something, I listen to it, and I'll put a lot more things at trial than I used to. When I say at trial, I'll knock it off for a while and see how it works out. I'll also, I have found it totally indispensable to have a sponsor that'll tell you the truth. And it usually all comes down to honesty. All those character defects. So you can call me up and say, what are you doing? I'm reading a book, or I'm working on a project. I may be watching TV, but I don't want to tell you I'm watching Star Trek, TV. I want you to think I'm really a progressive guy and I'm just studying and working on projects. I'm not a couch potato, Now what does that hurt anybody? Well, I'm not telling you who I am. That's what it hurts. It hurts our relationship together because you don't know what I'm doing. You don't know who I really am. I also know there are some things that is none of your business. When I got divorced, I remember some of the best advice I ever had from the wife of my sponsor. And because people come up and then say, how are you doing with this or with that? And how you handling the situation? And instead of responding to that, my sponsor said, best answer is, why do you ask? And when they say, well, just concern, your response is, well, I appreciate your concern. But you don't have to lay all your garbage out in front of everybody. You lay your garbage out in front of your sponsor, and because we spread a lot of stuff out there that doesn't need to be spread. It's between you and your sponsor, and that's why sponsorship becomes so important. Now, all those character defects that I have that I don't even know what they are going to be removed the same way. I'm going to have to follow that process. I learned how to not drink. I'm going to have to not drink one day at a time. Talk to my sponsor and pray I've got to remove those character defects. I'm going to have to quit having relationships one day at a time. Talk to my sponsor, and until I get that relationship. As people said, how long did you go without dating? I don't know. I think back on it now, and it was a while. I don't think it was a year. No, it's probably more like 9 or 10 months, 11 months. But if I've taken the third step and turned my will and life forward to the care of God, that means I turn everything over, including my personal life, including the bedroom. If I'm going to invite God into the bedroom, I got to be able to have that point. At that point, doesn't have a thing to do with time that we've been dating. It has to do with what am I willing to invite God into. I may have been dating her for 6 months, and I don't feel comfortable inviting God into the bedroom with her, so I shouldn't go to bed with her. And but all those defects should be got that same way. We have to quit doing them. Now, as I said, I don't know what I'm doing that may be wrong. And so my sponsor and I have a couple of clues when he sees something wrong. Whenever I start to justify anything I'm doing, when he comes up and says, why are you doing that? I can justify it. My subconscious, if it's wrong, subconsciously, I will justify why it's okay for me to do that. Give you an example. I got a very good friend of mine. His name is Dick. None of you know him. But Dick's a little older than me. And we got divorced about the same time. And a few years later, he'd come back. He went to California, came back, and I ran into him, and we're talking. And I said, Dick, I said, how you doing? Doing good. We're talking. And he said, I said, you seen anybody? He said, John, I have met the greatest woman on earth. Really? Yeah, she is beautiful. She's educated. She is, without doubt, the most mature 20-year-old I have ever met in my life. Really? Oh, John, she has taught me so much. I'll bet she has. And he said, yeah. He said, and you know what, John? We got to look at this sobriety. Let's make the sobriety a little different, I think, because if you've been sober a year, you've been sober 365 days. And if you may have had a slip in there, but if you got 365 days, that may be a year sober. And if you've been sober 2 years or 5 years, she's been sober a little less than 5 years if you added all the years up. She started when she was really young. And I said, Dick, how long has she been sober consistently? 3 months. I said, okay, see, I can justify anything. And what does the book say about rationalization? Rationalization and justification is the process of making the socially unacceptable behavior socially acceptable. Is that not a form of insanity? And I will do that. I will do it. And so whenever I start to justify and rationalize why it's okay for me to do anything, my sponsor asks a simple question. John, why do you find it necessary to defend yourself? See, because it's the right thing, I won't have to defend myself. But if it's the wrong thing, subconsciously, I would build a defense. Why it's okay for me to do that? And I'll do it, but I didn't think about it. But that's the right thing I'm doing. Is the why you're doing that? I kind of want, why? Is there something wrong with that? And so you got to have, and going through this process of uncovering, discovering, and discarding. That's what we do in 4, 5, 6, and 7. Uncover, discover, and discard. And when I'm going through that process, I got to have someone, we call them sponsors, there's mature enough and honest enough to tell me the truth. So that he can say, that's a problem. That's a problem. See, I can't see When I'm climbing a mountain, I can't see the mountain I'm on. I can see all the other mountains around it, but I can't see the mountain I'm climbing. Your sponsor's not on your mountain. He's sitting down there in his chair, watching you climb that mountain. Doofy already, there he goes again. You're going to walk right off that. He's headed right for the cliff. He's going off that cliff one more time. Call the ambulance. You're going to need to be picked up. He's not on your mountain. He can see what you're going through. I can't see it because I'm involved in it. So you got to have someone that you trust enough that'll be honest with you, that tells you the truth, saying, And here's the thing I learned. Whenever my sponsor tells me I'm doing something wrong, he's right. I don't have to argue with him about it. He's right. And I say that because I came to the conclusion that I have not ever told anybody I sponsor not to do something because I didn't like them. If I didn't like them, I could care less about it, But if I'm sponsoring them and I love them, I'm involved in their life, I don't want them to get hurt. So I say, I wouldn't do that. You're headed for the cliff, My suggestion is you walk away. And whenever they make a suggestion to me, they're right. Because they're on my mountain. They're not wrapped up in it like I'm wrapped up in it. They can see things I can't see. Because I'm too emotionally involved in it. And all those character defects are going to have to come out, and it's going to be over a period of time. See, it's called progress, not perfection. And that's what we're going to learn in AA. That, as I said, things I'm doing this year, I can't do next year. Because that's progress, not perfection. Now I want to turn it over to any questions, and then anybody got any questions about 6 and 7 that I talked? It wasn't that good. You have no question. I'm going to tell you, this is going to be a great conference. We're going to speak tonight. I'm going to go over my story and the probably a few spiritual things tonight. And then tomorrow, a good friend of mine, Jimmy Diaz, is great. You won't want to miss Sunday morning. I was going to speak tomorrow morning. So thank you very much.